everyone. Welcome to Fat 50 and Running a Marathon, a channel dedicated to health, fitness, and goal achievement. The topic this week is habits, both good and bad, so let's just get started. To begin with, let's start with a few little psychology behind habits. Now, most of us are guilty of self-serving bias and fundamental attribution error. What does this mean? This means that most of us, again, most of us, are guilty of taking all of the credit when good things happen and putting all of the blame on someone else when bad things happen. That is, we're often trying to figure out ways in which we personally were responsible for things that turned out well, despite whether we had any real hand in the matter or not, or even if we had a minute hand in it. And when something does go wrong, automatically we start looking for someone or something else to place the blame on, either another person or the environment or any number of other factors that would indicate that somehow we're not at fault. Well, I believe that that's fundamentally part of the problem that most of us have with our bad habits and even difficulties in establishing good habits. See, your life's outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits. It's just that simple. Your habits ultimately make up who you are. Now, what you can do is focus on what you can control and change the habits preceding the outcomes. See, for every action that we have, you're basically casting a vote for who you want to be or who you want to become. For example, 1 minute of meditation is not going to turn you into a meditator, and 1 push-up is not going to turn you into someone who is prone to exercise. However, that 1 minute of meditation starts you towards being someone who becomes a meditator. That 1 push-up puts you towards someone who is more likely to exercise. See, the reason that bad habits stick as opposed to good habits is actually pretty simple. That's because bad habits have an immediate reward. For example, eating food that you shouldn't, say a slice of cake. The rewards are immediate. It tastes good, it gives you a little sugar rush, it smells good, you're enjoying the whole situation. The cost of good habits is the present. The cost of bad habits is the future. Going and exercising and making that a good habit obviously doesn't have the same appeal as eating a slice of cake. That's where the equilibrium is distributed differently. However, that slice of cake, if you continue to eat it and you continue to eat more and more of that, that's where the cost of it comes down the road. That is why bad habits cost down the road but have immediate rewards, and good habits have long-term rewards with immediate costs. Now, how does one go about creating good habits? Well, there's a number of things you can do. The first of which is to optimize your environment. And by that I mean, and I'm speaking specifically about, say, a good habit, let's mention exercise. You might in the morning, before you go to bed at night, set your exercise clothes in a spot where you're going to see them the instant that you wake up. I myself do something very comparable to that. Since I go walking in the morning, I set my walking clothes and my walking shoes in a spot where I see them the minute I wake up. That way I know that the first thing I'm supposed to do is actually get up and exercise. Another thing you can do is you can scale your habits to the point where you can ask yourself, can I do this 90% of the time with almost 100% success? And if the answer is no, you haven't scaled the habit down far enough. For example, going back to that same example of setting out your exercise clothes before the night before you go to exercise. I now am at a point where the least that I do every morning when I get up at 4 is walk around the block. Ideally, I would walk 3 miles in the morning, and most mornings I do, but some mornings I just can't do it and just don't want to. But what I've convinced myself is to go ahead, get up out of bed, get dressed, walk down to the front of my building, and then walk around the entire block and come back. It's not entirely what I wanted to do, but it is closer to what I wanted to do than not. And it is definitely preferable than not going at all. Another thing you can do is master the entry point of your good habit. Now, in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he mentions the dancer Twyla Tharp. He says that apparently she practices her routines for at least 2 hours every day. How does she get to do that? Well, she doesn't focus on the practicing. What she focuses on is getting dressed and hailing a cab. That's where her energy is. Not on the exercise, not on the dancing, not on the routines, nothing like that. Her focus is to get dressed and hail a cab. Once she's in the cab, it's damn near impossible to decide not to go into the studio and exercise and go over the routines. It kind of makes sense if you think about it. Habits are an entry point. They are not the end point. 5 or 10 decisive moments you make every day will determine if the next chunk of time is actually going to be productive or not. The behaviorist Wendy Wood says 40 to 45% of all the decisions that we supposedly think we make during the day are actually just habits. With habits, there's something called the habit loop, and it's comprised of 3 parts. The first part is the cue. It's the automatic trigger for behavior to start that habit. Secondly, we have the routine, which is the behavior or the habit itself. And third, there's the reward, which helps the brain remember the pattern for the future. For far too long in our study of habits, we've been focused on the routine. What we've learned recently is that it's actually the cue and the reward that really need to be delved into when trying to figure out how habits function and how they're created. There was a German study in which they asked all participants to exercise. They then asked a third of those participants to use some sort of cue, whether that was setting their car keys next to their bedside table so they knew to get up and drive to the gym in the morning, whether it was simply setting exercise clothes next to the bed, but the idea was to set up some sort of cue that would trigger them to exercise. In addition to that, they were told after exercising to give themselves a small piece of chocolate. Well, 6 months after the study, 58% of that group of third were still regular exercisers and were not using the chocolate. Now, something else that's very important with habits is setting up a chain. And as I mentioned earlier, I do set out my clothes in the morning. What I've done recently by doing this system whereby when I wake up in the morning and I feel like I just can't do that 3 miles and instead walk around the block is I've set up a chain. I have set up in my head that I am someone who wants to get up every morning at 4 o'clock and go for a walk. Ideally, it would be a 3-mile walk, but even if it's around the block, that is certainly better than not doing any sort of walking at all. And it also is helping me establish a chain which then turns into an actual life change as opposed to just a habit. Well, that's where I'm going to close out for today. We are going to discuss this in greater detail on Friday, and we'll probably go over a few more points that James Clear made in his book, Atomic Habits, or Charles Duhigg makes in his book, The Power of Habit. Until then, I hope that you will come and check us out on Friday. I hope you're liking this new routine. We're going to try to stick with it of a Monday, Wednesday, Friday routine, discussing one topic over the course of the week. Let me know what you think. Let me know if this is the way to go or if we should do something else entirely. Until next time, remember, only by taking care of ourselves first are we capable of taking care of others. Thanks for watching. Topher.